The Queen's Talk, where we honor and celebrate women on their self-love journey, where we share our stories about how we overcame past trauma and where we are now. Welcome to the Queen's Talk, Queens. Hello. Welcome to the Queen's Talk. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
That's good. Well, welcome to the Queen's Talk. And here on the Queen's Talk, we talk to different queens in the self love community about how we overcame our past trauma and where we are now. We emphasize self love. And tonight is a special conversation because we're going to talk about mental health and finance. A lot of women go through it, men, women, in between, everybody goes through mental health and finance. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Tracy. Tell us your name and where you're from.
So I am Stacy Tucker, and let me first say thank you so much for having me. I think your platform is very much important, very much needed at this time, because there is so much uncertainty that we faced over the last few years, particularly, and women as well as men have a lot of uncertainty about their finances and their financial well-being. And so thank you for sharing this platform and giving us a voice to talk about these things.
No problem.
Absolutely. So I am Stacy Tucker. I am the owner and operator of an insurance agency. I have been in business, or should I say self-employed, not necessarily this business, since at least 2005, but I think we've all been business for ourselves from very early years. I educate and empower people to build a legacy and to distribute a legacy. And the best way to do that is through proper education.
Nice. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your brand? Can you kind of take us back about why you even got into this financial insurance, wealth, financial wealth? Because a lot of people want to know, like, how did you get here to where you are today?
It's a good question. You probably know this already. There are not very many women, and certainly even fewer African American women in the financial services professions. It is still very much the bastion of men. They're older industries. I started in banking at a very early age. I worked at a bank when I was about 17 or 18 years old. It was one of my very first jobs outside of high school. So of course that, I touched a lot of money every day, like literal money, but it also taught me a lot about finances, being able to see how much other people earn, how they live with those resources. And throughout my life, I've often always wanted to be in business for myself. So in 2005, I entered the real estate profession, which was very much an entrepreneurial endeavor. And so I did that for a few years. And then I was being pursued and considering the opportunity to own a financial services firm, like an insurance company. And when I looked very, very carefully at who was in the industry, I didn't see anyone, very few people who looked like me. And there was a moment that I can recall looking at the magazine of all the people who were in the industry. And I said, I have to do this, because I knew there were women who would need to have these conversations in a vernacular that they could digest and use in a practical way. And so I went down the path to become an insurance agent, financial services professional.
Nice. Okay. Now we talked about childhood. How was things growing up for you, childhood, when it came to finances? Like, how did you view finances as a child?
That's a really good question. Most of us operate in our finances today based on some of our earliest money memories from childhood. And that's usually whether it was from an abundance perspective or from lack. And so I grew up in a very urban area, very tough area, very low income area, low high school completion rate, very hardly any, college attendance rates and things like that. I, for some years, lived with a single mom. And even when she got married, the finances were sort of treated in a single mom fashion, if you follow what I meant. The finances
Right.
were very separate. And so we we had some lack there. There were times when during the summer, if I can share a personal story, my stepfather had gotten laid off, and my mom was of modest means. Women were starting to enter the workforce in those times, and some secretarial and factory type jobs, and we needed the cash, so we got on the bus with the migrant workers and went and picked blueberries during the summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that was like 8 or 9 hours out in the hot sun all day. And what you earned is what you picked. That's what you earned. And I remember being so embarrassed when we came home. I was glad that we had a driveway, so we would drive into the driveway when I would go in the back, because you would come out of those days like very dirty and hot and things like that. But I will share with you also that out of those days with some of that money, I remember even back then I bought a dress for $100, way outside my budget, some designer dress, but that's just how my mind always went. I knew I had to work hard and hustle. My mom was a hustler as well. That term has gotten a bad name lately, but we just did what we had to do.
Nice. Okay. So you knew that at a young age that you had to start working. How was things as a teenager when you kind of like are kind of like a teenager and you want to start wearing certain things and your mom won't really give you the money for? What did financial like the how did money look for you like as a teenager? That's the right question.
So I went to a trade school, a vocational school. And so we would go and learn a trade, and part of your day was part of the time was academics, the other half was working. So I started working very young, like many of your listeners probably also. And so then it did give us a little bit of our own pocket change, but a lot of us still had to contribute to our families back then. Our parents would say, "Oh, you got to pay a little bit of rent, you have to help with this bill," and things like that. But so having working from such a young age, it did give you a chance at having your own money. And then around my late teen years, my parents moved away from where we were living. I stayed, so I was very self-sufficient. What I made is what I had. I rented a bedroom from a friend, had to pay rent, had to pay my phone bill, got my first credit card. You already know the rest of that story.
Yeah.
Got my first credit card at the age of 19 without any guidance from anyone who understood that
Yeah.
very
A lot
well.
of us don't have guidance.
Yeah, so that's how my early days with money were. I just knew I needed something else to like subsidize what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So we're here because we're talking about mental health and finance. Now, I've talked before about impulsive spending. Like we spend money and we don't have it, but we're sad. So we want to feel we want to do something that makes us feel good for the moment. But the problem's still going to be there later after you spent the money. So did you ever go through impulsive spending? Like, okay, you was a teenager on your own and, you had to kind of make yourself feel better at the time because there's nobody else there to make you feel better. So you went and spent something to think that. Did you ever experience that? Or have you experienced clients like that?
Yes, of course. So it's a very common thread in family lives where there's lack, if I can use that term. So we all want to look nice. We all want to do the things our friends are doing. We all want to entertain ourselves. We want to go places. And so, and that wasn't just in my teenage years, Leslie. This exists to this day to some extent. It's much more under control, but there are times in your life when, as you say, you are having, whether it's a moment of anxiety or depression, and the high that you get from obtaining something that you want feels good for the moment, but it actually creates a sort of a vicious cycle, because
It does.
the bill's going to eventually come due. If you don't really know how to time that and how to time that with your paydays and things like that, you can create a much worse cycle for yourself. I've got plenty of those personal stories like that to share. There are too many of them for tonight, but yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, what is your biggest advice when it comes to impulsive spending? Like, I know we talked before earlier about mindset of spending. Like, what's your advice when it comes to people who just spend impulsively, like knowing that this money is for my rent or for my bill, one of my bills. Like, what how do we change that mindset? Or like, how do we get a plan? How does that work out?
So I think the first thing is, don't deprive yourself of all small moments of joy and pleasure and things like that. So you can do it, but it has to be within reason, right? You have to have a plan. You have to know that, okay, if rent is due on the first, no later than the fifth, and I don't get paid again until the ninth, I can't do this today. Maybe I can defer that. So we all know the term delayed gratification. Our society doesn't teach that very well. We are a credit-based society. So it says, don't save for a car, don't save for the washing machine, don't save for the trip. Go online and shop and put it on, this app. And
Afterpay.
pay it
Yeah.
in. I didn't want to say names, but you can say them, right? So
Mhm.
like you can put it on these terms where you can pay it in 4 payments, but you've paid for it twice by the time it's all said and done. So think very long and hard about it. And there are other ways to get it. If credit cards are a useful way to satisfy those short-term impulses, as long as you know when it's due and will you have the resources to cover everything that you need to cover by the time it comes due.
Yeah. And earlier today, we were talking about friendship credits. You said you were teaching your kids friendship credit. Now, can you tell everybody else what friendship credit is? Because I said I don't have friendship credit because I wasn't taught friendship credit.
Okay, so we all have a circle of friends, right? And at some point in our lives, we need to develop a set of friends that can help us out in those tough moments. Maybe you want to do something, maybe you want to go get a massage, or you want to go out for brunch, and maybe you can share that with a friend, right?
Yeah.
Instead of spending the whole brunch, maybe I'll share a plate or dish or something like that. But you also need a circle of friends that in a moment when you're a little bit tight on resources that you can call and say, hey, I need $50. And of course, as you're younger, that's the number. But as you get older, it might be 500, then it might be 5,000. So make sure but also be willing to do that reciprocally, so that if there is a financial crisis, you've got a pod of people who can help you through that and navigate. But credit is still what it is. You have to pay it back on time, because not only could you lose the money, you could lose the friendship. So you do need to be careful with that, but make sure you start that together. I have friends that we've saved to go on vacations together. We opened an account and we all contributed to it for a certain period of time, and we went on a Disney vacation. So that's what I mean when I say friendship credit, finding people of like mind, of like stature potentially, that you can do things together with. So you can have the fun, but maybe split the cost.
Yeah, that's something I've never heard of. And I told you, I don't have friendship credit. I only ask if I need it, and I try not to ask. I only ask my family for money. I don't ask my friends, because that's just the mindset of like, why would you ask your friend for money? But I guess it's the mindset of credit, and people. Not everybody has the money to let you use. Like, they're not in a position to like say, but it's all in the circle that you create because if you're having around like-minded people, they might be broke like you, so they don't have the money to let you to borrow. Yeah. Another question I want to ask: how does finance and mental health go hand in hand? I know when we reached out to this, we wanted to talk. How does the two go hand in hand? Because I know when you're spending money, you can be depressed that you don't have the money to buy what you really want. So let me just go ahead and get this cheap thing, and you get 10 of these cheap things, and you still, mental health and finance. That's a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons why we are depressed is because of financial reasons.
So to tell that story, is it the chicken before the egg, right? So debt can create anxiety, right? Which can cause some health problems, not just mental health problems, but it can actually cause chronic illnesses, right? It can cause depression. And so it becomes this cycle. Now, if you are already suffering from mental health challenges and are unwell mentally, say you have anxiety or depression, or maybe some manic disorders, right? So in a moment of mania, you might go out and do the big impulsive spending and buying, and now you don't have the means to pay it off. If you're also unwell and you need time off from work because you can't cope, maybe because of anxiety and stress, now you actually have less income, but also more medical bills. So then there's this cycle that perpetuates itself, and now you can't function well. You can't even meet the basic financial needs that people should have. So when you talk about the higher level things like investing in stocks and real estate, you can't even get to that level when you don't have enough for the month, right? I say you got more month than money. If you have more month than money, you have to figure out how to make that be different. And then you can go to the next level, saving 3 to 4 months of your expenses. And then thinking about investing, and then debt reduction and things like that.
Yeah. Before I move on, Stacey, can you tell everybody your title and the title of your position and what you do? And anybody in the chat, please don't hesitate to comment in the chat and ask me and Stacey any of your questions that you have during this conversation. So Lita says, wow, great point. Thanks for joining us, Lita. Can you tell everybody what's your title and what do you do exactly?
Sure. Thank you for those just joining. I am the owner of insurance agency. That means I provide insurance services and risk management services for people, for their property, for their finances, for their home. When I say property, I mean their home, their car, their jewelry, things like that, their boats. And then I also provide life and health services. So your life insurance, your disability insurance, supplemental things like that, to help you really manage your finances. So in the event of an emergency, you do have a first line of defense. Maybe instead of pulling from your own pocket, you've been sort of putting on layaway these plans that'll help solve some of the short-term issues like you asked me earlier. So, oh, I think I'll let you get to that question yourself when we get to it. Yeah.
So how do we change our mindset? Like, how do we get out of debt? How do we do that when we're so far into debt and we don't know how to weigh? And you said just work harder. Like, that's simple. But in our mind, it's not that simple. Just work harder. So how would you change the mindset working in this? How long have you been working in this industry? You said since you
I'm
were
in the
16.
financial services industry since like 2005, 2008.
Okay, so over your years of experiencing different people and yourself, like, how do we change our mindset when it comes to finances? Because it will kill us, you know?
No, you're absolutely right. When I mentioned, chronic illnesses and things like that, you can be ill from these things, like physically ill. You can't work, you can't get out of bed, you can't talk to people, you can't perform the normal functions of your job and your day-to-day activities. That's obviously way more serious. You may need medical attention and things like that. But mindset is inward work, right? And part of that means being around people who share the mindset that you can see yourself in at some point in the future. And I will say this delicately, but sometimes it's our families. If they have a mindset of lack and, girl, why you want to buy these things? Why you want to go and do big things? And don't get bigger than your britches. A lot of those things are the money mindsets that we were taught from a long time ago to not want more things, not like more things for the sake of just having things, but to be able to serve others and to serve ourselves and do the bigger things we want to do. We may be involved in like a ministry work or volunteer work or things like that. You can't do that if you got to work 3 jobs just to meet your basic needs. So it's okay to think, oh, I need to make more per hour for this job. If you don't start that early in your career, in your 20s
That
and
part.
30s, like you're always going to be, you can't go to your boss and ask for a $25,000 raise at one slot. So you have to start from down here, negotiating your worth. And I'm going to use the word worth here because we're afraid to ask for something we don't feel that we're worthy of. And
Oh,
I will
yes.
say it again, sometimes, not sometimes, often it is within our household, those around us. It could be a spouse, it could be your sister, it could be someone who doesn't want to see you be better than you were yesterday. So of course they don't want you to do better. So you may have to move the chair, go to a different room, and be around people who are
Yeah.
okay with you doing bigger things.
And it's sad because in a lot of households, we don't I'm not to talk about that in my household, but I didn't understand credit. I didn't understand interest. I didn't understand credit score. I didn't understand, you know what I'm saying? Like, once you get a credit card, pay it off right away. I mean, of course, I know that's common sense, pay it off right away, but or don't go past a certain credit card limit because we're not taught those things in the Black community, unfortunately, or whatever. So I think that is beautiful that you teach your kids friend credit. Like, let your friend know that you're reliable to pay this money back, because we do lack that in the African American community, and we get depressed about it because we're in so much debt. Yeah, we look good because we have the most expensive shoes or this we got this Louis bag, blah 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 blah. But then what's in your bank account really, and how much debt are you in? Because you got to make payments on that bag. But the persona of debt and money is just, it can make you really depressed and sad. Like, oh, I don't, and don't let me talk about social media. Social media has a way of making it look like everything is glamorous when it's not what it seems, you know?
You're right. It's just the highlight reel. And you made some really good points about that. And so when it comes to debt, there's multiple ways to tackle it, right? If it's really large, the things with the highest interest rate, people will say, pay that off first, right? And that might make sense, but it may be the thing with the biggest balance. But if you got a balance of, say, $250 or $300, and you can pay that off in one paycheck, go ahead and do that because now it's paid off and you feel good. Remember what you asked about feeling good about accomplishing something? So
Mm-hmm.
that helps with your mental health. You're like, oh, wow, I accomplished something. I paid this off. Don't close the account, but just pay it off
Yeah,
so you can
somebody
throw it
said
in the
that.
freezer, those
Don't
sorts of
close.
things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
don't close your eyes. Have learned that, like, never close an account. Yeah, you can pay it off, but you want to have a long term running credit card or whatever. I'm gonna answer a question. It says Asia Nicole says, this is a great advice, especially since I'm new to working and learning how to manage my funds. Well, thank you.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
Somebody says absolutely. Robbie Williams. Yeah, thanks for joining. Like I said, anybody that's want to ask questions to me or Stacey tonight, just free to comment in the chat about financing, and we'll try to answer your question as soon as possible. But yeah, so we talked about mental health. Now, people that deal with mental health and they impulsive spending or manic spending, we know that word, manic spending. Can you write that off? Manic spending or
Yes, by paying it off. So here's the situation. Anything that involves money or that involves you owing money to someone else becomes yours forever. And when I say forever, I mean forever, until the day you die and beyond. Debts are not cleared by death.
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier.
They will follow you. They will follow you to your estate. Now, if you have an estate that doesn't have anything, the creditor can't get the money. But you certainly don't want to leave things on your family that could have been avoided. So one thing I would recommend to people, don't co-sign for people. I get it. Adults may need to do it for their child to help them get a car. But now you're tying up two people's credit, right? And so when it's time to go get other things that are necessary, now the creditor can come to some, you could be passed away, but the creditor's coming after your sister or your husband or your aunt or uncle who signed on this thing. So we want to be careful about those kind of things. And again, this feeling that we get because we need to make ourselves feel good about something like buying or how we look, there is nothing absolutely wrong with wanting to look nice, because it does help our confidence as well too. I totally get that. But we do have to make sure that at the end of the day, nobody's knocking on our door trying to take our car back, or attaching your wages and filing judgments and liens. Those things stay with you for a very long time. They just keep growing,
Yeah.
So,
And it keeps makes your depression even worse. And it's like, well, I'm already in debt. What's a little bit more? Well, I'm already in debt. What's a little bit more? It is like it's a vicious cycle that we go through. It's like a rabbit and a hamster. Like it keeps going in circles and not getting anywhere. Yeah.
The statistics show that people who are who suffer from mental illnesses, which may be caused by the debt and stress like that, they save 25% less than people who are financially well. So it's so fundamental to our overall well-being. And when I say spiritual, economic, family, social, economic, so making sure that we are okay financially has a huge impact on how we feel about ourselves and our worth, because sometimes we wear the debt like it's a character flaw, and it's not. It's not. You made a mistake. You got into some debt, or you may have had some circumstances that caused you to be in this situation. And it could have been your mental state at the time. Any type of trauma, whether that's a family trauma, a loss of a loved one, loss through separation or divorce, a loss of a child, a loss of a job. Sometimes things like that can have such an impact on us emotionally and mentally that we solve it by, as you brought up, like spending and trying to make ourselves feel better. So we want to make sure that if we want to do those things, find a friend. We need a financial buddy. We all do, right? Somebody we can call and go, hey, I saw these things. Do you think I should get this? Girlfriend, when's your payday? No, okay, so won't we wait till Friday? Wait till the coupon. I have a coupon for you. Like, let's do this together. Oh, you don't need a whole box just because it's at Costco and it's 30% off. You're not going to eat it all. You're going to throw it away. It doesn't make sense. So think rationally. And I know if there's a mental issue, it's hard to think rationally about those things, but find a financial buddy that can help you rationalize literally, you should be able to pick up the phone like you talk to your doctor or your financial person, like your insurance agent, your CPA, your attorney. Those people should be on speed dial on your phone. We need that pool of professionals at all times, or somebody who's in that profession. They don't have to be somebody who you have on retainer that you're paying, but a friend in that profession who can give you some guidance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a friend.
Yeah. So you're like, hey, I had an accident, but the person hit me and my deductible $500 is $1,000. Should I file this as a claim? Because that stuff ends up costing you more in the end. You need to talk to the right professional with these things.
I agree. You can't. I hate to say it when they say birds of a feather flock together. But that's the mindset. So you do have to change your mindset, and what changing your mindset becomes changing the company that you keep. So if you don't have a responsible person around you to tell you and guide you right from wrong, then how are you going to know which way to go into when you have no guidance? So it really is a mindset. So what is the best advice you can give to people to change their mindset? I know we have to have a plan, but what kind of plan can we put in action to be like, okay, first let me tackle this credit card. Like, then I want to get my credit score up to here. How do we start that plan? Or what's your advice for that, to start that plan?
So that's kind of a different class, Leslie. Like those are tactics and strategies. If you're talking mindset, that starts inward. It starts feeling better about yourself and what you're worth. Am I worth being free of debt? Or if I have debt, is it the right kind of debt? Does it have an asset attached to it? Is it a car? Is it a house? Is it something that when I pay it off, I still have this thing of value sitting here? Or is it just credit card random debt and I don't know what I did with the money kind of debt, right? Unsecured debt. Because if you have an asset, then great, you have assets, no problem. I own things.
I like the way you put that. I like the way you put that. Is it an asset debt or is it just a random debt? Because there's a difference between the two. So
of course. So it really starts within, like really we just lie down on the bed, close the curtains and think like, who do I want to be? What am I worth? And I don't know if you've ever done like a net worth table or your personal finance statement when you put the assets on one side and liabilities on one side, the number at the bottom says what you're worth, but that's not who you're worth as a person. You could be negative $10,000. Trust me, sometimes mine is like bigger numbers than that, negative, right? But that's not who I am. It's just the numbers on the piece of paper, but I know I'm worthy. I'm a child created in God's image. So I know I'm worth something, right? More than just the numbers on the paper. And as long as we feel like the debt and what we owe people is synonymous to who we are, we're always going to feel bad about that debt. And we're not going to come out of it because, as you said, then it's going to spiral you down into anxiety, depression, stress.
Yeah. And we're not going to get anywhere. What was the next question? Let me look at my thing real quick. Okay, so like I said, can you write off debt? Because I know we talked about that. Did we ask, can we write off debt?
That is an amazing question. Yes, some debt.
You can.
If you are a business owner, the money you pay in interest is an expense that can be written off. So if your business is structured properly, if you have employees, that's an expense. If you spend money on marketing, that's an expense, right? So those things can be written off. Your meals, some of the things that you're doing regularly anyway, you have to eat every day, do it with a friend. Now it's a business lunch, write it off, right? But you have to have the right accountant or tools. If an accountant's not in your budget right now, there's plenty of tools out there that you can use to track your expenses properly. Get one credit card or two, you put all your expenses on those cards. And then at the end of the week or the month or however your cadence works, if you do it monthly, and then those things are written off.
Yeah.
Travel, when you travel, the meals you eat when you travel, there's a percentage of that gets written off. So don't ever eat alone. There's a book, Never Eat Alone. So don't eat by yourself. And everybody.
Wow. So if you eat with more than just yourself, you can count it as a business expense.
Are you going to go eat with a friend or anybody you know and not talk about your business?
That's true.
Probably not. How you doing? How's your business? I saw you on Instagram. I saw you busy. Okay. And you're going to be wearing your products and they're going to say, oh, you smell good. You'll be like, oh, that's my new shea butter or whatever. This business.
Wow. I never thought to do that. Like there's so much that I don't know as a small business owner. And that can be depressing. It's like, okay, am I doing this right? Or how do I do it? And it's so competitive out there. Like being an entrepreneur, self-employed person, it's hard and you don't know the directions to go into. It can be overwhelming. You like, am I spending more? Well, of course, in the beginning, you're going to spend more money than you make as an entrepreneur. And it's like, is it worth it? But then everybody's telling you it is, but like the numbers don't add up. So that can be hard too.
If I can share with you personally, those early years of my business, it was the struggle bus. Mm-hmm. You know how they say, go big or go home? I should have went home. Oh, for real. I should have gone home. I went so big because I just had these big dreams and visions that I knew that I was going to work hard and I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to do these things. I had a big office, lots of workstations, lots of phone, lots of employees. Boop, 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 boop. Like you said, the math ain't mathing. It didn't make sense. So I had to do a few steps back to be able to go forward. And so I'm so grateful I stuck with it because now I'm in a position where, as you can see from my post earlier today, I'm able to impact lives by employing people. And that's my contribution to the community. I pay taxes in the community and I can use those people to further impact lives. But, so think through all the things you're doing in business. It will be worth it, but you do have to stick to it. And then as you see Robbie put in the chat, if you use your vehicle, work all your mileage, write that stuff out, get a little magnet with your name on it and stick it on your car. Now your car is if you're not titling it in your business name, put the magnet on the car.
Wow.
All those little tchotchkes you have, those pins, nail files, give out gifts, little things like that.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up. So where can everybody find you, and how can they get in contact with you?
Excellent. So I have an office in Vienna, Virginia, but I service the DC metro area. My office phone number is anybody's taking it down, is 703-938-0303. You can also reach me on my mobile number, which is also on my website, which is StacyTuckerInsurance.com. That's my website. You can request quotes there. You can read about all our products and services. You can see photos of my team there. And I'm on social media on all platforms at Stacy Insures Me, StacyTuckerInsuresMe. Stacy Insures Me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. On Facebook, it's Stacy Insures Me 1.
Okay. And another thing, do you have any upcoming events or workshops we can look forward to, or anything like that we can kind of personally attend?
Yes. And on April 22nd, I'm going to be participating in the BCN second annual conference. I'm on a panel about finances in business and small business. And since you asked, I'm often looking for opportunities to educate and enable women and some good men on how to pursue and properly structure their finances and distribute their legacy.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us, Stacy. We know finances is under a lot of lists of things, so we got to cover a little bit in the 30 minutes that we've been on here. It's just so much. Being an entrepreneur myself and dealing with anxiety and depression myself and financing, it can be overwhelming, but I know we can get through it. It's just somebody guiding us, like I have you now to, hey, Stacy, is this a good business idea? This is a good investment to get into or whatever. It's always great to have people that kind of know something in other departments so they can help you out. And it's all about networking and helping each other and honoring each other. You can follow me at Brown Girls Embrace LLC and on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. And you can also purchase some of my products in my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is on my Instagram. So thank you. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you so much, Stacy, for having us and everybody backstage who joined us backstage tonight. I never had a backstage audience tonight. So thank you all backstage. Thank you for all in the comments. And I'll catch you next time on the Queen's Talk next week. Talk to you later.
But thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Bye-bye.